Colonel, I appreciate this opportunity to talk with you. Will you tell us a little about your background before entering the Army?
Yes, Bob, I appreciate being here with you and with General Polk and Colonel Wally. I graduated from high school in 1935 and went to Texas A&M, where I was in the Cadet Corps for 4 years. And I graduated from Texas A&M in 1939, and at that time I had 3 job opportunities. One that paid me $115 a month, one paid me $120 a month, and the third one was $125 a month in the United States Horse Cavalry. So I elected to take the high-paid job, and so I went to Fort Bliss in July of 1939 and was assigned to the 8th United States Horse Cavalry, the 1st Cavalry Division, and that's incidentally I learned for the first time today, just a while ago, that General Polk was also in the 8th Cavalry in 1933, I think he said. So I joined the 8th Cavalry, which is one of the regiments in the 1st Cavalry Division, in 1939, and I soldiered there with them for about 1.5 years. We went on maneuvers an awful lot, rode those horses all over the desert out there around El Paso, went to Balmarie on a maneuver, and we went to Louisiana twice on maneuvers. And my second trip to Louisiana, all of the, or a large number of the lieutenants received orders to go to the 26th Cavalry in the Philippines. They were called the Philippine Scouts. And of course this was in 40 by then, 1940, and maybe late 40, early 41. Anyway, we knew that we were headed for a war. And so we received these orders with great concern, because we knew that if we went to the Philippines, that the Japs were likely to overrun us because our forces were thin. And after a day or two, a sergeant major came up to my tent and said, "Lieutenant, you're requested to report to the regimental adjutant." So I went down there and reported, and he said, "Lieutenant Utterback, your orders to the 26th Cavalry have been rescinded, and you're ordered to report to the Commandant of Cadets at Texas A&M for duty in the Department of Military Science and Tactics." Of course, I sighed a great sigh of relief, and I could have kissed that guy. So the next day, they sent me up to, I forgot, an Air Force base in Louisiana, north of where we were. We were in Leesville and Jasper. But anyway, I went to Texas A&M and spent 2 years down there in the Department of Military Science and Tactics, and taught military science to the, well, I taught the first year, I taught the freshmen, sophomores. Second year, I taught the juniors and seniors. Then I was transferred to Fort Riley. I spent about a year and a half at Fort Riley, and then I was transferred to the 3rd Cavalry group in Georgia. And I was a major by that time, and so I was assigned as the S3 of the 43rd Squadron. And Phil Davidson, who retired, a 3-star general, was then a lieutenant colonel, and Phil was in command of the 43rd. He also was a classmate of Marshal Wallach, who you just heard of, I'm sure. They both graduated in 1939. Les Cross, at that time, was a major and was the executive officer of the 43rd. So when I came in, I was also a major and was signed as S3. And I don't recall the exact time that we left Camp Gordon, Georgia, to go to Boston, but we went on a train, just the soldiers. Our equipment either was over there or was sent over there. I don't know, but we left our equipment there at Camp Gordon. And we went on a train to Boston, where we boarded the HMS Aquitania. Yes, HMS Aquitania, Her Majesty's ship, or His Majesty's ship. And it was the third largest ship in the British merchant fleet. And there are 8,000 of us on this ship, and they stuck people all over the place. They even had the swimming pool drained, of course, and they had soldiers sleeping down there in that swimming pool on the floor. But we went across by ourselves and without incident, and landed in the Firth of Forth in Scotland. And we got off of the ship and onto a little British train and went south. I don't know how far south it was, but it must have been 100 miles maybe, and to a place called Kidderminster. And we spent some time there. Later went down south to the Salisbury Plain, where we drew our equipment. And I spent a lot of time down there getting our equipment fit and ready for combat. Now, while we were at the Salisbury Plain, something happened to the Group S3. I never found out. I don't know to this day what happened to him. But anyway, he was transferred out, and Colonel Drury, who was our group commander at that time, had Colonel Davidson, Phil Davidson, went to group as the group executive officer, which moved Major Cross up to squadron commander of the 43rd, and he was promoted lieutenant colonel, and that also moved me up to executive officer of the 43rd. So then shortly after we got our equipment and everything ready for combat, of course, we crossed the channel and went into combat. As I remember, early in August, I think the after-action report says we were officially committed on the 10th of August, but that's pretty close, I'm sure. And you asked me earlier in the interview about anything outstanding, and I guess one of the things that I remember was the incident relating to the 2nd French Armored Division that passed us up. I'll never get over that. I'll carry that, I guess.
It's a sore spot.
Yeah, it's kind of a sore spot for me, because all of our guys were set on being the first American troops into Paris. And I honestly believe that we would have been. If we weren't the first, we'd have been among the first, certainly. But anyway, we didn't get there, so I didn't get to see Paris at all until after the war was over. And then we turned east and went on in, and then I guess another event that has great significance for me personally was the day that Colonel Cross, who was then the 43rd Squadron Commander, and 2 other officers went down on the Moselle River on a patrol. I never did know why they went. And I'm not even sure that I knew that they went until later, until after they were captured. I'm not sure that Cross ever told me about that. But anyway, he went down there with Captain Nelson and Lieutenant Downs, and Lieutenant Downs was killed by a machine gun. Burst of machine gun fire, as I heard, and Captain Nelson was shot. I've heard a lot of different stories about where he was shot, but I saw him year before last out at Fort Bliss in El Paso, our reunion out there. He told me he was shot in the leg, but I've heard he was shot other places in that vicinity of his torso. Cross was captured, and I never did see Cross again until year before last out in El Paso. So he told me about being captured. He said that he was taken into eastern Germany, into a POW camp, and when the Russians moved toward the west, the Germans started marching all of the prisoners in this POW camp toward Berlin. And Cross told me that he marched about 200 miles, and pretty rough. They had a rough go, and all their shoes wore out, and a lot of the officers were barefooted. I've already related earlier in this sequence about General Patton coming to the 43rd's headquarters in the morning, early in the morning there in Bettenburg, in Luxembourg. I finished the war with the squadron, and Major Sewell later became my executive officer, and Harry Sewell was a very fine man, very fine officer. I was delighted to see him here. He's here at the convention, and I also saw Harry 2 years ago in El Paso. So we've had a little bit of time to exchange old war stories, and we had dinner last night together, of course. And I was delighted to see Harry again, because I've always had a warm place in my heart for Harry, because he's a very fine man, very fine officer, and was a very devoted, dedicated soldier. We finished the war, as you know, down in Austria on the lakes down in there, and then later we went into Yugoslavia. And then when we came back from Yugoslavia, after I guess it was an unsuccessful mission, we went down there and couldn't find Tito, or couldn't do very much of anything that we were supposed to do, but we spent 2 or 3 weeks down there, and then we're finally ordered back. And so when we got back into Austria again, Colonel Davidson and I changed jobs. He was ordered, he was transferred as group exec back to the 43rd Squadron, because it was going home and fight in China, for redeployment in China, as I recall. And so I was relieved of my command of the 43rd, and I went up to group as a group executive officer. So the group headquarters was moved down south of Munich to a place called Starnberg, and we were on the western bank of the Starnberger See. It's a long lake, about 12 miles long. And we only had about 50 men, because the squadrons had all gone back to the States for redeployment to China. And so we were assigned the job of looking after the Feldafing DP camp. Now, these DPs up there were about 5 miles down the road from where we had our headquarters. There were about 5,000 Jewish people who had been collected and assembled there from concentration camps all over Europe. Now, these people were in relatively good health. That is, they were all walking, and none of them were hospital cases. And one interesting event that took place about a month or two after we took this DP camp over was that we were visited by a pretty high-ranking group of people, and we were advised by Corps headquarters that General Eisenhower and General Eisenhower and General Patton and General Walker and his chief of staff, General Collier, would all inspect the camp and wanted to see it. So Colonel Polk and I had some high-ranking guests on our hands there for one day. And unfortunately, none of us had any film at that time, and so I don't know of any pictures that were taken. That's one of the regrets that I have, that we couldn't get a picture, because I would love to have had a picture of Eisenhower and Patton and Walker and Collier and Polk and Utterback all together, but unfortunately we didn't get it. So Harry Truman, as you remember, President Truman dropped the bomb on Nagasaki or Hiroshima, I forget which, on August the 6th of 1945. So our plan, or General Polk's plan, or Colonel Polk's plan, and my plan to go with General Patton ended. I mean, you know, the show was over by then. So I went home in October of 1945, and I got home and was discharged at San Antonio, Texas in late October 1945, and as you heard a while ago, General Polk said he got home in November of 1945. But of course, General Polk was a West Point career officer, and Colonel Wallach was West Point career officer. I was not a career officer. I was an ROTC graduate out of Texas A&M, of which I'm very proud. And so I left the service. Soon after that, I went to law school down at the University of Texas and got my law degree and got my law license after passing the bar exam in 1950. And after I graduated from law school, I practiced law in Austin for a short time with a law firm. But Austin, Texas at that time was full of lawyers because there were an awful lot of GIs that came back to go to school on the GI Bill of Rights, which I did. So there was a surplus of young lawyers, and we didn't make any money. All we were trying to do is save enough money to get out of town to get a better job. So finally I got a pretty good offer from a life insurance company in Fort Worth, Texas to be the in-house attorney for the company. So the pay was pretty good. So that's the way I got out of Austin, Texas, and away from all those many young attorneys. So I went to Fort Worth and was the attorney for this insurance company for 7 years, and then I was offered a job as the vice president and trust officer of the First National Bank in Fort Worth, and they again raised my pay. So I left the insurance company and went to the First National Bank in Fort Worth, where I was the trust officer, vice president and trust officer for 7 years. And finally, when I concluded that I wasn't going to be promoted to president of the bank, I guess I realized that was as far as I was going, that I left the bank and opened my own law office, and so I practiced law until I retired in 1984. So I've been retired about 5 years now.
Play a lot of golf?
I play golf three times a week, and yes, I play a lot of golf at Colonial Country Club in Fort Worth. Yeah, I'm not a very good golfer. My handicap is 12, and I shoot about anywhere from 80 to 85. But
that's pretty good.
you know, I play a lot. So.
Tell us about your family.
Well, I have a wonderful wife and 3 children. I have a boy and 2 girls, and they're all doing real good. All married, and I have 7 grandkids, 7 grandchildren. And and my wife and I travel. We go to Europe a lot and go to Hawaii. We just got back from a cruise to Alaska. We got back 3 weeks ago. So I'm lucky, I'm blessed, I suppose, with a good family, and I'm living pretty much the good life now.
I'm sure you are. Thank you very much, Colonel.